The Mediterranean sun beat down mercilessly on the plains of Marathon as Dr. Elena Kostas brushed the last grains of ancient soil from what would change everything historians thought they knew about Greek warfare. What started as routine archaeological documentation had become something far more significant. And if you're fascinated by hidden secrets of ancient warfare like this discovery, you'll want to see how deep this mystery goes. The bronze spearhead emerged from the earth different from any she had catalogued in her 15 years of studying classical Greek military artifacts. Its weight distribution was wrong, the grip angle calculated for something beyond simple thrusting. Elena's weathered hands, marked by countless excavations across the Aegean, trembled as she measured the weapon's dimensions. "Professor Dimitriou," she called to her mentor, who was examining pottery shards 30 meters away. "You need to see this immediately." The elderly academic approached with the careful gait of someone who had spent decades navigating archaeological sites. His eyes, sharp despite his 73 years, widened as he examined Elena's find. "This isn't from the Persian Wars," he whispered, his voice carrying the weight of recognition. "Look at the metallurgy, the craftsmanship. This predates Marathon by at least a century." Elena nodded, her mind racing. "But that's impossible. According to every historical source, the hoplite phalanx as we know it developed during the 8th century, perfected just in time for the Persian invasions. This suggests something else entirely. The spearhead bore microscopic scratches and patterns that seemed deliberate, almost ritualistic. Under the portable microscope Elena had brought from the University of Athens, these marks revealed themselves as a complex system of notches and grooves. "These aren't battle scars," Elena observed, adjusting the microscope focus. "They're measurements, precise calculations carved into the metal itself." Professor Dimitriou leaned closer, his breathing shallow with excitement. "Elena, what if everything we've been taught about the phalanx is incomplete? What if there was a system, a methodology that went beyond simple formation fighting?" As the afternoon shadows lengthened across the battlefield where Athenians had once faced the might of Persia, Elena photographed every angle of the spearhead. The weapon seemed to whisper secrets from 25 centuries past, secrets that suggested the Greek military advantage hadn't been about individual heroism or superior equipment. "The spacing," Elena muttered, measuring the distances between the carved notches. "These measurements correspond to something specific." "Professor, what's the average distance between a hoplite's shoulders?" Dimitriou consulted his field notes, filled with decades of measurements from skeletal remains found in Greek burial sites. "Approximately 58 centimeters for an adult male of that period." Elena's calculations confirmed what she had begun to suspect. These grooves are measuring interpersonal distance. Not just where to stand, but exactly how close, how the shield of one man must align with the spear of another. This isn't just formation fighting, it's engineered interdependence. The implications crashed over both archaeologists like a wave against Athenian shore. If Elena's theory proved correct, the Greek phalanx hadn't been about creating better individual soldiers. It had been about creating a system where individual soldiers became physically and psychologically incapable of fighting alone. "We need to examine every battlefield site," Elena declared, her voice filled with the determination that had driven her from a small village on Crete to become one of Greece's most respected military archaeologists. "Thermopylae, Leuctra, Chaeronea. If this system existed, there will be evidence." As the sun set over Marathon, painting the ancient battlefield in shades of gold and crimson, Elena carefully wrapped the spearhead in archival cloth. Tomorrow she would begin a journey that would take her across Greece, following clues left by warriors who had discovered something profound about human nature itself. The secret of the phalanx, she realized, wasn't about the strength of individual Greeks. It was about their willingness to surrender individual strength for something far more powerful. A collective force that made each warrior simultaneously vulnerable and invincible. Professor Dimitriou gathered his equipment as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "Elena," he said quietly, "if you're right about this, we're not just looking at military history. We're looking at the birth of a psychological weapon that changed the course of Western civilization." The wind across Marathon carried with it the whispers of ancient battles, and Elena felt the weight of discovery settling on her shoulders. 25 centuries after Greek warriors had faced Persian spears in this very place, Their deepest secret was finally ready to be revealed. 3 weeks after the marathon discovery, Elena found herself in the basement archives of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, surrounded by artifacts that had never been properly studied together. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she laid out spearheads, shield fragments, and armor pieces from 7 different battle sites, creating a timeline that spanned 3 centuries of Greek warfare. "The pattern is undeniable," she explained to Dr. Marcus Stevens, a military historian from Oxford who had flown to Athens after hearing about her findings. The British scholar leaned forward, his expertise in ancient combat formations making him the perfect collaborator for this investigation. Elena pointed to a series of bronze shield bosses arranged chronologically. "Look at the evolution. Early shields show standard grip placements, but by the 6th century BCE, we see these." She indicated small bronze studs on the inner rim of a shield from Sparta. "Measurement points," Stevens observed, understanding immediately. These studs would press against the warrior's arm at specific intervals. "Exactly. And notice this." Elena moved to a collection of spear butts, the bronze spikes at the rear end of Greek spears. Standard historical interpretation says these were for planting spears in the ground during rest, but look at the wear patterns. Under magnification, the spear butts showed distinctive scratches in precise intervals. Stevens ran his finger along the marks, his expression growing more amazed with each observation. "These were measuring devices," he breathed. "They were using the spear butts to maintain exact distances between ranks." Elena nodded, her excitement building. "But it goes deeper than physical spacing. Look at this." She produced a clay tablet fragment from Thebes, covered in what had previously been dismissed as practice writing by a young scribe. "This isn't practice writing," Elena continued. "It's a training manual. Watch." She began translating the ancient Greek text. "When Alexios moves forward, Demetrios must feel the pressure against his left shoulder. When Demetrios's shield shifts, Nicias must adjust his spear grip. The bronze whispers to bronze, and flesh learns to trust flesh." Stevens sat back in his chair, the implications washing over him. They weren't just training soldiers to fight in formation. They were training them to become physically and psychologically inseparable. The Greeks discovered something we're only beginning to understand in modern psychology, Elena explained, pulling out her laptop to show contemporary research. "Mirror neurons, collective consciousness, the way human beings naturally synchronize their movements and heartbeats when working in close cooperation." She opened a video file showing modern military units training in close formation. Special forces around the world still use principles that the Greeks developed 25 centuries ago, but we never understood the full science behind it. Stevens examined a bronze helmet with unusual interior modifications, small ridges designed to rest against specific points on the skull. Sensory feedback, he realized. These ridges would vibrate when the warrior moved out of position relative to his neighbors. The helmet, the shield grip, the spear measurements, every piece of equipment was designed to make the individual warrior hyper-aware of his position relative to the collective, Elena confirmed. A hoplite couldn't fight effectively alone because his equipment literally wouldn't function without the presence and positioning of his fellow warriors. They moved to the centerpiece of Elena's research, a complete set of armor from a Spartan warrior found at Thermopylae. Unlike museum displays that showed individual pieces, Elena had arranged the equipment to demonstrate how each component interacted with the others. "Put this on," Elena suggested to Stevens, indicating a reconstructed bronze cuirass. As Stevens donned the armor, Elena positioned replica shields and spears around him at the distances indicated by the measurement marks they had discovered. Immediately, the British historian's posture changed. "I can feel it," he said, wonder in his voice. "The weight distribution only works when there's pressure from the left and support from the right. The shield is too heavy to hold effectively without something to brace against." Elena smiled. "Now you understand. A Greek hoplite in full armor, with authentic equipment built to these specifications, literally could not fight alone. The physical design of every piece made individual combat impossible. But the psychological component was even more sophisticated," she continued, opening another clay tablet. "This one's from a Spartan military school. It describes training exercises where warriors would fight blindfolded, learning to move and strike based entirely on the sounds and movements of their unit mates." Stevens removed the helmet, his hair disheveled, but his eyes bright with understanding. They were creating a collective consciousness. Not metaphorically, literally. Training human beings to function as components of a larger organism. Elena pulled up satellite images of ancient battlefield sites on her laptop. And it worked. Look at the archaeological evidence from major battles. Persian, Roman, and other armies show scatter patterns consistent with individual combat. Weapons and bodies spread across wide areas as formations broke down. But Greek battle sites show something different, Stevens observed, studying the images. Concentrated areas of artifacts, formations that held together even in death. Because they couldn't break apart, Elena confirmed. The Phalanx wasn't just a military formation. It was a psychological and physical machine that turned individual Greeks into something unprecedented in ancient warfare. As evening fell over Athens, the two researchers continued their work by lamplight, surrounded by artifacts that told the story of humanity's first experiment in engineered collective consciousness. If you've ever wondered how ancient innovations still influence modern military tactics, the connections we're about to explore will surprise you. Outside the museum, the lights of modern Athens twinkled like distant stars, but in the basement archive, Elena and Stevens were communing with the ghosts of warriors who had solved one of warfare's greatest challenges: how to make soldiers stronger by making them utterly dependent on each other. 6 months after the marathon discovery, Elena stood before the International Conference of Military Historians in Geneva, her presentation slides showing the culmination of research that had taken her across Greece and into the deepest archives of European museums. The auditorium was packed with scholars, military officials, and researchers eager to hear how her findings were reshaping understanding of ancient warfare. The Greek Phalanx, Elena began, clicking to a slide showing her reconstructed warrior equipment, was not just a battle formation. It was humanity's first successful experiment in what we now call human systems engineering, the deliberate design of technology and training to modify human behavior at a neurological level. Dr. Colonel James Patterson from the U.S. Army War College leaned forward in the front row. He had flown from Pennsylvania specifically to hear Elena's conclusions, knowing that her research might revolutionize modern military training. Elena clicked to her next slide, brain scans showing neural activity in modern soldiers during close formation exercises. Working with neuroscientists at the University of Athens, we've discovered that when humans train and fight in the close proximity formations used by Greek hoplites, their brains begin to synchronize. Mirror neuron activity increases dramatically, creating what researchers call collective cognition. The audience murmured with interest as Elena displayed side-by-side images. Ancient Greek pottery showing perfectly synchronized phalanx movements and modern brain scans showing synchronized neural patterns in soldiers training together. The Greeks didn't understand the neuroscience, Elena continued, but they understood the result. By designing equipment and training that forced absolute interdependence, they created warriors who literally thought and moved as one organism. Professor Dimitriou, sitting in the third row, smiled with pride as his former student revealed the full scope of their discovery. Elena clicked to photographs of the original spearhead from Marathon, now displayed in a place of honor at the National Archaeological Museum. The measurement marks we found weren't just for spacing, Elena explained. They were for timing. Each groove corresponded not just to distance, but to the rhythm of coordinated movement. Greek warriors trained to a cadence that synchronized their heartbeats, their breathing, their steps. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Cambridge University raised her hand. Dr. Kostas, are you suggesting that the Greeks deliberately induced what we would now recognize as a collective altered state of consciousness? Elena nodded. Exactly. Ancient sources describe Greek warriors entering battle in what they called divine possession. But our research suggests this was actually a measurable neurological state induced by their training and equipment. She clicked to her final series of slides, modern applications of Greek principles. Elite military units worldwide already use variations of these techniques, though until now we didn't understand the historical precedent. Colonel Patterson spoke from the audience. Dr. Kostas, at the Army War College, we've been independently developing training protocols that mirror what you're describing. Our most effective special operations teams show the same neural synchronization patterns you've identified in ancient Greek warriors. Elena smiled. The Greeks discovered something fundamental about human nature, that our individual strength is actually quite limited, but our collective potential is almost unlimited. The Phalanx succeeded not because it made better individual soldiers, but because it made individual soldiers impossible. The conference moderator, Dr. Franz Weber from the Max Planck Institute, asked the question everyone was thinking: what are the implications for modern military doctrine? Elena's response was measured but profound. The Greeks proved that technology designed to enhance individual capability is less effective than technology designed to enhance collective capability. Modern military equipment still focuses primarily on making individual soldiers more lethal, more protected, more capable. But the Greeks showed us that the future belongs to systems that make soldiers more connected. She clicked to her final slide, a reconstruction drawing showing a Greek phalanx in battle, but overlaid with modern neural network diagrams. The phalanx was humanity's first artificial intelligence, not electronic but biological. A system that took individual human brains and networked them into something greater than the sum of their parts. The auditorium erupted in applause as Elena concluded her presentation. During the question and answer session that followed, military officials from 12 countries requested private consultations, while historians peppered her with questions about specific archaeological sites. Later that evening, at the conference reception overlooking Lake Geneva, Elena found herself in conversation with Colonel Patterson and Dr. Mitchell. The Swiss Alps provided a dramatic backdrop as they discussed the broader implications of her research. "What strikes me most," Dr. Mitchell observed, "is how this changes our understanding of Greek democracy itself. If their military success was based on collective consciousness, their political innovations make more sense." Colonel Patterson nodded. "In modern military terms, you've identified the world's first true force multiplier, not a weapon or technology, but a method of human organization that made each individual exponentially more effective." Elena gazed out at the lake, its dark waters reflecting the lights of the International Conference Center. The Greeks faced the same challenge we face today: how to coordinate individual human beings into something greater than themselves. They solved it with bronze and leather and 20 years of training. We're trying to solve it with computers and communications technology. But the fundamental principle remains the same, she continued. Individual humans are remarkable, but connected humans are unstoppable. The Greeks understood that the greatest military secret wasn't about making warriors who could fight alone. It was about making warriors who couldn't fight alone, who were so interconnected that they became something entirely new. As the evening wound down and delegates began planning follow-up research collaborations, Elena felt the weight of her discovery settling into perspective. The spearhead she had found at Marathon had led to something far more significant than a reinterpretation of ancient military history. She had uncovered evidence of humanity's first successful experiment in collective consciousness, a blueprint for human cooperation that had shaped Western civilization and continued to influence how humans work together 25 centuries later. The secret of the Greek phalanx, she realized, wasn't really about warfare at all. It was about the fundamental truth that individual strength, no matter how great, pales in comparison to the power that emerges when humans truly learn to move, think, and act as one. The Greeks had discovered that the strongest warrior was not the one who could fight alone, but the one who could never be alone, whose strength came not from within, but from the unbreakable bonds that connected him to his brothers in arms. Standing on the shores of Lake Geneva, surrounded by scholars from around the world who were eager to build upon her research, Elena understood that the greatest archaeological discoveries don't just tell us about the past, they illuminate paths toward the future. And if these insights into ancient collective consciousness have captured your imagination, there's still so much more to explore about how our ancestors' innovations continue to shape the world we live in today.